The word I have my purchase takes my word.
That's true.
Or I will get some exceptions. Yes, true. That's for decision making.
Business for myself now, so.
Yeah. Jen and Ashley, I think Marcus is not working. By Zoom.
Okay.
Marcus is here. Yep. In Zoom.
And our attendees.
Okay,
Yep.
yes, you think so working. Maybe if you close it out, maybe go back to that. Yeah.
You
Yes,
you have a forum.
Okay. Well, at least it's moving so far. Yeah. First will not be here. Okay. Second. Oh, right here.
Yes.
You have stop watching the phone last night.
Welcome, everybody. Looks like we're about to get started. We have a very full agenda and we have a bunch of public comments, so we want to make sure we leave room for that. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with public comments. And do we have a list of folks in order?
We
Or?
do.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got Miss Victoria Burton signed up first.
Okay.
So we're gonna do, since we have 5 people signed up for it, we have 10 minutes, we're gonna time it at 2 minutes apiece. Ashley has agreed to time and let people know when they have about 30 seconds left, so it's not so abrupt when the thing goes off.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Marcus go ahead first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me let Marcus into the meeting here. Let's see.
Let me try again. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, let's get rolling if that's okay. So good morning. My name is Marcus Mundy. I'm the ED of the Coalition of Communities of Color, he, him pronouns, but today I'm here as a Portlander. Full disclosure, I have been in contact with Victoria Burton over the last several weeks, learning about the situation under discussion today, her property and heritage tree number 26. I have also read the draft letter from the UFC regarding this tree. And that UFC letter and the unique circumstance of detailing so many opposing reasons despite the commissioner's vote to delist prompted me and several other Portlanders to send our own letter reminding commissioners that you had a process and you followed it, you voted, a decision was rendered based on the discussion and information at hand, and the usual process is to forward recommendations to council. And I was also concerned further, a few of those listed issues that were in your letter were, to me, were not, I'm a layman, but were not exactly as portrayed. For example, the negative impacts on the tree canopy. Materiality must be kept in mind. It is hard for me to see how one tree out of the 2.9 million private property trees, 1.2 million park trees, 218,000 street trees, or even the 300 plus heritage trees will impact the canopy as significantly as was uplifted in that letter. Insufficient exploration of alternatives. The UFC and their staff had ample time because when I looked at the agendas going back to December, I saw this issue on agendas. It may have been before that, but that was clear that there's been enough time to explore alternatives. And then one last thing I saw was the lack of public notice. The UFC meetings are all publicly noticed, and as stated, this has been discussed on that agenda since December. So even that reason didn't really hold water for me. So let me just, in closing, because I know I'm running out of time, let me just say that I am testifying to simply urge you all to respect and honor the choice of the majority of the commissioners and move on and let this family, your fellow Portlanders, move on. So that's it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. And who do we have next for?
Next, Victoria, you were first.
You want me to go? All right. All right. So good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Jones. I'm the owner of Development Services, and I'm a longtime Portland resident. This letter needs to go forward today for vote by the City Council on June 7th. Heritage Tree number 26 is recommended for delisting by a vote of 6-4. This is what the Heritage Tree policy states. There are several items in the letter I want to provide my comments. On bullet point number 2, under primary reasons in opposition, insufficient exploration of alternatives demonstrates to me a lack of understanding of the underlying cause for the request. The Burtons made it clear that it was the infestation of the beetles and their inability to eradicate them for 3 years is what is causing the economic hardship. The root damage is extremely problematic, but the beetles cause them to spend money on remediation with insufficient revenue to offset the cost. This is not an insignificant matter. I also want to note on, I believe it's page 2, that the plaque was high on a tree and was not easily recognizable in the early years when they were not informed about the designation. Paragraph 5, I believe, on page 2 is accurate. Given the multi-year timeline to fully mitigate infestation, the total cost could be in the tens of thousands. The Burtons estimate the cost to eradicate the beetles combined with the lost revenue is the issue. The statement on page 3 is incorrect. The pruning and elm leaf beetle treatment is relatively inexpensive. This does not look at the entire issue. I want to clarify that Burton's goal in developing the property always included the existing residents. We requested the trees removed because the existing home could not be rented and the infrastructure is experiencing damage from the tree. We did not have a goal of tearing down the tree or the residents and redeveloping the property. My business's mission is to work with property owners such as the Burtons who want to take a small step and develop the property. There's no developer fee.
Do you have about 30 seconds?
Okay. Like Mr. Mundy stated, I haven't seen in my public sector and community development experience an item come to vote by a commission and then the correspondence going forward is ambiguous. I think the vote stands. The letter, to me, in the way it's presented, can be considered another form of oppression, if not institutional racist tactics. So I just think we should just go forward with the letter and the vote and present it to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
I signed up.
Oh,
What's that?
go ahead.
Oh, you're up next still if you would like your time.
Okay,
Gotcha.
okay. Again, I think I would like to echo what Tony and Mr. Mundy has expressed. For us, it's been 90 days of deliberation since February. There's been deliberation publicly and closed door meetings. Again, we did not take this first choice of asking for the tree to be delisted. In August, when we contacted the Forest Department, we asked for help to understand what we were dealing with and how could we mitigate the situation. And as I've testified before, we did not receive any information or any help other than to find an arborist and to find a pest control person. We did all of that. We tried everything. And then slowly but surely, the property began eroding even more. It showed you the pictures of the new infrastructure that we had put in of the sidewalks and it being cracked. I showed pictures of the roots up against the house and the leaks that were going on in the basement. So it's just continued to compound it. And so by January, we had no other choice but to come and ask for it to be delisted. And I'm gonna read this quickly, but I just wanted to bring those points. And again, as I said, when we bought the property, this was not listed on title. Justin, Megan, Leah, JR, Melinda, and Ivory, allow us to thank you. We know that you joined the urban forestry because of your interest in the environment and preserving the urban canopy. We knew requesting the tree on the property be delisted faces the commission with a difficult decision, but we saw no other reasonable option. Thank you for considering our outcomes and upholding your responsibilities. We thank you for taking the time to review the materials we've compiled and for not simply paying lip service to our concerns. You listened and understood our plight. We admire your courage, took a stance against the status quo and to correct the wrong. Protecting trees should be your mission, but we're thankful you recognize that the mission should be also advance in support of everyday people like ourselves. You've done this by saying yes. Yes, we love trees, but if it means this one tree needs to be delisted for the Burtons to retain ownership of their property, then yes, this one tree must be delisted. You also consider the soundness of the bad policy that for 22 years, Urban Forestry Department did not give warning to home buyers by listing heritage trees on title, and how unfair it was to financially burden unaware home buyers from any background of this way. Specifically to our situation, equity and inclusion aren't just buzzwords for easy political points, but something concrete and implementable. Understanding policy through the lens of those who have been historically marginalized, we hope you continue to explore the disparate outcomes experienced by members of the BIPOC community and people with lower income. We applaud your efforts to hold your colleagues to the task of creating a more just society, to join in rectifying practices that yield continued inequities. The 6 of you took the stance to rectify a very real threat to a well-being of a Black family, gave me, a Black woman who was born at a time in America when Black people did not have the right to vote, hope. You are our future, with the responsibility to this city and country to insist that policies is pursued justly and to ensure that the public interest includes historically marginalized people by asking those who are invested in the status quo to leave their place of comfort and to look through a different lens. You open the possibility that we all can be elevated and thrive together. It is not easy work. But again, Justin, Megan, Leah, JR, Melinda, and Ivory, we thank you and we admire your courage and ask that you continue with your commitment to the environment while keeping equity and inclusion at the forefront.
And who's next for comments?
Next up, we have Alston.
Thank you. That's my husband. He couldn't be here. Thank you.
So we've got, looks like Micah still signed up. Let's see if we can bring Micah into the meeting. Hi there, Micah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Micah Meskel, and I'm the interim urban conservation director for Portland.gov. And today I'm testifying to sort of raise concern around a bill in the legislature, HB 3414. I want to urge the Urban Forestry Commission, Urban Forestry and Park staff, and you all as individuals to express your concerns with regards to section 2 of HB 3414. Both to the city's lobbyists and bill sponsors. HB 3414 is the governor's comprehensive bill that sets out a wide range of actions with the goal of increasing housing supply and affordability across the state. Portland Audubon is completely supportive of leadership's efforts to increase housing affordability and supply, but strongly oppose the strategy they've laid out in section 2 of HB 3414, which would facilitate the biggest rollback of urban environmental protections that Oregon has ever seen. It would be the biggest rollback ever. It would decrease the resiliency of our future housing stock by allowing for full removal of urban tree canopy, only exacerbating environmental justice issues for urban communities. It would require municipalities across the state to grant an unlimited number of variances to local land use regulations to any requesting housing developer, compounding environmental losses for our urban communities. And it does not require housing developers to demonstrate that they're providing any public benefit, either additional units or increased affordability, thus doing little to lessen the housing crisis. We are advocating strongly for this bill to remove section 2. And if section 2 remains, which is the variance portion, which allows unlimited variances to developers, we are strongly pushing for the -5 amendments as a starting point for future amendments, specifically and adding some additional exemptions to the variances that are allowed to ensure that natural resources protected under a Goal 5 natural resource program, local tree codes, and the Willamette River Greenway are all pieces of that are held harmless. And this is super relevant for the Urban Forestry Commission, as many land use regulations that protect trees on Portland's urban landscape could be completely thrown out the door. And and thrown out for
That's time, Micah.
a single building to be built. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, next we have meeting minutes, and which months are we considering as being finalized for commissioners to vote on today? Let's see.
We have March
We
and
have
April.
March and April. Okay, any comments on either March or April's?
Do one at a time.
Sure, let's do March. Any comments on March? Okay, does anyone want to make a motion to approve March?
We'll do it for March.
Okay, any second?
Second.
Thank you. All approving? Raise hands. Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay, one abstention. Okay, great. April, any comments on April?
Yes. Under item 4, we were talking, Brenda Bell came and spoke with us during public comment. And the first thing she opened with is she'd like to see longer than 5 minutes for public comment. She suggested that better to have a little more time for public comment, and I'd like that reflected in the minutes. Thanks.
Okay, any other additions? Okay, anyone make the motion to approve?
This is Darrell. I make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
I think Ivory,
Second.
Ivory.
Oh, Ivory second, sorry, Ivory.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, any noes? Any abstentions? Okay.
Great minutes.
Thank
Ashley.
you.
Ashley, thank you so much.
Yes,
Really great.
wonderful. Okay, we're on to the forestry report. Director Cairo.
Thank you. Morning, all. I have 4 items for you today. And one of them is indeed House Bill 3414, which Micah just spoke to. First up, today's agenda includes discussion of an Urban Forestry Commission community agreement, the idea of developing something like that. That is intended to support meeting and organizational culture for the commission. Please know that staff and your co-chairs are also working on commission and commission committee management, such as clarifying roles and developing structures, procedures, and guidance to ensure consistency with requirements and expectations for city advisory bodies, including the commission. For example, things like conflicts of interest and sharing whether there be conversations outside of commission meetings around the topics on the agenda, which is something that's expected of all commissioners and is in the bylaws. But perhaps that would be something that would be mentioned at the start of each meeting. That's just an example of the types of things that other advisory bodies are doing. So this includes staff working with the Office of Community and Civic Life. They are the city entity responsible for guiding all city advisory bodies. So these will be future agenda items and are separate from today's discussion about the community agreement. So there's a distinction there. You can put those things in the parking lot, community agreement's a little bit different. Second item, during yesterday's city council budget hearing for the coming fiscal year, Commissioner Rubio announced her intent to consolidate development permitting functions in the city of Portland in an effort to speed up permit issuance and mitigate the current housing crisis. Commissioner Ryan and Mayor Wheeler also shared remarks that indicated their support for Commissioner Rubio's announcement. Commissioner Rubio stated that she wanted the fiscal year 24-25 budget request to include this change. That would not be the coming fiscal year, but the one after. And that it would be in place by July 2024, it would start next summer, in other words. So this was just announced yesterday. Further details about the proposal will likely come out over the coming months. So we'll be tracking that and it will perhaps be an agenda item for you all to consider. Third item, Spring has sprung, as they say, and we've gone right to those extreme summer temperatures, which means tree watering season is upon us. Recently planted trees need care, special care, including mulch, and in our region, regular watering in the summer to survive and thrive. Higher temperatures mean there's a greater need for that watering, especially for new trees. Insufficient watering often results in the death of the tree or weakening of the tree, and that increases susceptibility to stressors like pests and pathogens, physical damage, and poor care practices. Also, susceptibility to extreme weather events like high heat, and it also hinders tree development, long-term health, and the longevity of trees. As forestry commissioners, you can help encourage your neighbors, your friends, the folks that you associate with to be aware of the impacts of heat, especially on young trees, and to help them get out there and water. And I'll put in the chat a link to some specific information about mulching, watering, and young tree care that can help you with that. Just in the past few days, the World Meteorological Organization released a report forecasting record heat for the coming 5 years, which leads me to the final topic for my report today, House Bill 3414, which Micah just spoke to as well. It exempts property development in Oregon from land use regulations, including nature and environmental regulations, such as those protecting trees or requiring tree planting. So Urban Forestry has expressed opposition to this bill and is working with other city entities and the Office of Governmental Affairs on that topic. And with that, I would like to have Melody Brooks, our Chief Policy Analyst, introduce herself and talk a little bit about House Bill 3414. And that'll be the end of my report, Melody's part. Melody, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. As Jen said, my name is Melody Brooks. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Chief Policy Analyst and a member of the Equity Inclusion Team. And my work includes policy, standard operating procedures, and government affairs. 3414 is a bill that the city is neutral on, which is something that Jen and I have been discussing with the Office of Government Relations. This bill is supported by the governor, and the intention of the bill is to make affordable housing and housing in general easier for developers to build by limiting conditions which the local government may deny variances for housing development within an urban growth boundary. And the bill also establishes a housing accountability and production office. And the purpose of that office is to remove barriers to housing production. Our issue with the bill and what we have said as Parks is that it doesn't necessarily removing the variances or allowing these developers to have as many variances as they wish to have doesn't actually equate to more housing or even affordable housing. As Portland Audubon said, that they're not even required to prove that they're going to provide a public benefit. So we don't see this bill as actually helping with affordable housing, and something that Jen has been pushing OGR on is that when we talk about affordable housing, it also needs to include urban growth, tree growth, and that affordable housing shouldn't be a space where we limit tree canopy or provide subpar environments for people with low income, and that we see this bill doing that. So although the city has taken a neutral stance on it because they want to support the governor's agenda for addressing houselessness, because that is an issue in the city of Portland, we don't believe that this is, can you hear me now? Okay. We don't believe that this is an effective bill. I'll read it.
And there we go.
Oh, you hear me now?
We heard an effective bill, but we hadn't heard.
We do not believe that it will be an effective bill. That's what I was saying before. And just to read section 2 quickly, which is the main part that Portland Audubon just just spoke to. It says that within an urban growth boundary, a local government may not deny an application for a variance from land use regulations for the construction of a residential development on land zoned for residential uses unless the denial is necessary to address a health, safety, or habitability issue. And then they go on to talk about density, height, or floor to area ratio of development and some other exceptions. And this significantly limits what the local government is able to do to protect urban growth. So one of the things that we want to do moving forward is continue our conversations with the Office of Government Relations. We also want to urge you to contact your state representatives to vote no on this bill and press that this is actually not going to yield affordable housing. The housing that this bill could yield is going to be housing that is going to contribute to heat islands, actually. And I also would like to give an update on IRA. Do we have time for that? I'm not sure if we're pressed for time.
So Melody, the IRA item is later in the agenda, so you'll
Okay.
have time then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Melody, very much. And to clarify, also what or expound on what Melody was saying about affordable housing, and we think that affordable housing also needs the services of trees, and everyone in the city needs tree services. And I think that's what Melody was getting at in that part of what she was saying. Also, the commission is able to write and contribute to the comments to the state legislature on this. I would request that you do that. There you go. Now that's the end of my report, and I'll take questions. Justin.
So this wasn't specifically in your report. In North Portland, they're building a giant aquatic center. Depending on which park they build it in, a lot of trees are gonna be cut down. So I was wondering if you had an update or had any more knowledge on that.
Yeah, we can cover that at a future meeting.
Okay.
But know that part of our role in urban forestry, which Casey could even speak to, is that we are involved in all city development projects on behalf of protecting trees and preventing tree loss where it can be, and applying the city's tree regulations, which is what this House bill is saying we would not be doing. So we'll get to that at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Roberta.
So when we talked about that bill that would have allowed Portland to apply to be a special district for parks, we reviewed the bylaws, and my understanding is the commission can submit recommendations beyond recommendations to the city, like what you were talking about to the legislature, with the Office of Government Relations approval. And so it sounds like from what Melody Brooks was saying that you guys and others are negotiating in Office of Government Relations. But right now, the city's position is neutral, better for worse. So what I'm wondering is if maybe, well, we can take this further to the policy committee. People can submit comments as individuals. Another option we might want to consider is communicating as a commission to the Office of Government Relations and or to the council, encouraging the city to take a more stronger position on this, rather than submitting comments to the legislature. I'm not sure the bylaws allow us to do that, so.
So I made sure to get clarification from our city attorney on this. It's a little bit different from what you're describing. Really, the staff liaison, that's me or Brian, has to approve the position of the commission before the letter's been drafted. And then we must work with the Office of Government Relations if the communication is with the state, federal, or tribal government. It doesn't say there has to be agreement, we just have to coordinate with them. So my interpretation is, you've already heard what Parks and my position is, we oppose strongly. And I would ask that the commission consider that topic and submit comments and to that effect as well. When and how you do that, maybe the policy committee meeting Monday could work on drafting something. That is up to you all.
Any thoughts from the commissioners on that? How you'd like to best go about submitting comments, letter, discuss it in the policy committee? Thoughts?
What is the time frame?
As soon as possible, unfortunately, Melinda. These are always fast moving with legislation. Melody, do you have any more specific timeframes beyond fast moving?
No, I don't for the bill.
Yes.
I don't have a specific time frame. I can just say like that currently there was a public hearing last week on the bill. And and it has been referred to the Ways and Means Committee. And that's why we're wanting folks to urge the representatives to vote no in the committee.
Commissioner Vandermark.
I just want to seek a process clarification question. So with that timeline, Melody, that you're outlining, and Jen, what you said, I know that sometimes there's different options available if we want to. So with the potential situation, if enough commissioners were in support of moving forward with a letter that oppose the bill, I'm trying to get all my language right here, would the option because of that timeline be to say that we give the power to the policy committee to draft a letter in support? Because I'm assuming we wouldn't have time to come back and review the letter. So I'm just, sorry, process to make certain we're getting it right.
Good, thank you, Megan. Important points. Yes, because it's a tight time frame, the commission would have to vote probably today to take some sort of action to see if the majority supports submitting something in opposition to the bill. That's been done in a number of different ways in the past. In the past, the commission has selected a couple people commissioners who've offered to be the drafters to capture the sentiments of the commission. The policy committee has also been asked to do that drafting, and the commission has voted to let them do that work and finalize it. Or it could be an individual, I guess, on the commission if somebody wanted to step up and be the author.
Good. Any motions on how to best address it?
My motion is for policy committee to draft a letter.
Thank you, Commissioner Bechtel. Any seconds?
I'll second that, offer an amendment to, a friendly amendment. Addition to it is, I think, just so that the commission's clear, I think what I would take to the policy committee is a desire to strongly support the importance of addressing housing issues in the state, that the Forestry Commission does agree with that. And I think there are aspects of this bill that are good, where they establish, people to work on this and an office to work on the issue. I think, what we're hearing is the real issue here from Melody Brooks and Micah Meskel is the variance issue, the requirement for variances against local land use regulations. And I think that would be what I think be good for us to focus on, because that's where the nexus is with trees, and maybe not oppose the whole bill, but oppose that section of the bill and explain why. And if folks are comfortable with that, perhaps the policy committee can work with that kind of guidance as a general framework for a letter.
Yeah, for the minutes, that's section 2 of House Bill 3414.
Correct.
Okay, so what's on the floor is that the policy committee will draft a letter. The main focus will be on that section 2, but that there'll also be, reasonable express support for better housing. So all in favor of that?
Adrian, can I ask
Yes,
just or add one thing? I know I'm on the policy committee and I will be out of the country. And I know Bruce is gone. So I just want to make certain that Roberta feels able to take this lift as kind of the sole representative, unless somebody else has joined the policy committee that I'm not aware of. So I just wanted to be very clear that this would be a lift on Roberta before we vote for Roberta to do something as a sole person.
Thanks, thanks, Commissioner
again,
Vandermark. Well, we'll discuss it with the group as well. There are people who are, and Micah Meskel also participates in that committee when he's available.
Yeah.
So.
Well, actually, it's interesting because are we allowed with meeting laws to have input by email on written things as long as that written item is posted? I mean, I think other committees do allow that, like, for example, and even voting offline on, you know, rapid things, for example, I'm also on the Parks Board and, you know, we do that.
How has that happened?
Maybe-
Maybe on the Parks Board, because I don't know. We'd have to
Yes.
look into it, but if
Maybe
the
let
Parks-
us know.
Okay. and we
Yeah,
can
look
talk
into it and let
after.
us know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
It's likely if
Um,
the Parks Board has done it that, has been able to do that, the commission should be able to do it as well.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, good. So.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And I think it could do a short letter, like a page, but, and I think the question is determining exactly who it would go to at this point, because I think, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure who this letter would go to from Forestry Commission, frankly, so that's my question.
I would think city council. And Melody, how would it get submitted at the state level? Do you know?
That's something I would definitely want to ask OGR about because, you know,
Right.
it's coming from a city related entity and we've already taken a neutral stance. So I would like to ask them how we can move forward in our advocacy.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one concept is also meeting with the sponsors of the bill. One of the sponsors is actually a colleague of mine. I'd be happy to bring the comments from the commission forward, set up a meeting and actually discuss it with her. Very honestly, I think she may not even sort of realize, you know, the potential negative impact of this. So anyway, something to think about, we could work out. Okay, so we need to vote because we're out of time.
So let's assume for now that our letter would go to the city council and that that Commissioner Feldstein could take our message at least to her colleague as a sponsor of the bill for discussion. That could be very effective. And because I too am a little concerned about sending a bill to the legislature when the city's taken a neutral stance in this commission and whether that is, you know, so you'll talk to our Office of Government Relations about that. We'll figure that out. That's good.
Yes, I will.
Okay. So good, we have some process things to figure out, but in the meantime, you know, what's on the floor, as I stated, is a letter from the Policy Commission, would be mostly Roberta. We'll see if we can get email input, which would be ideal. Commissioner Lilly, did you have a comment or is that a old hand?
Yeah, just a quick question. If the letter's drafted on Monday, could it be sent out and we as individual commissioners send a letter to the Oregon legislator?
As individuals, residents, you of course can express what you'd like to share with anyone. If you're expressing on behalf of the commission, that requires what we're doing right now, just to clarify.
Okay,
You'd have to
but
vote.
could we like reference our letter saying like in our individual comments?
I believe so. I don't see why not. Does anyone else know anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, if Commissioner Lilly, if there was a letter from the Forestry Commission to the council encouraging the city to take a stronger position, you can reference that. I mean, any of us could reference that letter and say the Urban Forestry Commission has submitted this letter to the city council and cite any points from it and any additional points you wanted to make on your own behalf. Okay, great.
Okay, so all in favor of creating this letter? Got the count there. Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? I'm sorry, I missed what your vote was. Abstaining?
Yes.
Okay, one abstention. Okay, we're gonna move on. Just quickly before we get to kind of the more substantive parts of the agenda where we, you know, may need to vote on things and so forth. Director Cairo informed us that we need to ask about conflicts of interest. So any commissioners have conflicts of interest on any of these topical areas that are gonna be deliberated today. No conflicts of interest that I see. And then the other question is, have there been advanced discussions about these topics? And if so, what were the nature of those, nature and content? Anything to report in that regard?
I talked to Jen yesterday about meeting today.
Okay,
Yeah, that's it.
okay, thanks, Commissioner Meister. And Commissioner Van Mark.
Well, and I mean, I'm happy to do it by item versus in advance of the whole conversation, but I do know that we'll be talking about the IRA funding, and the city is joining an application with the organization that I work for. So I will
Okay.
acknowledge that in advance.
Thank you. Perfect. Important. Perfect. Okay, on to the Inflation Reduction Act grant proposal update.
This would be for Melody to update on, since she is our lead on this.
Yes, so some background information. The Inflation Reduction Act last year allocated $1.5 billion to urban and community forestry. And we were initially instructed to apply for that funding through the state. So we submitted a state sub-grant application. And unfortunately, the states received not in a much lower grant than we were expecting. I think Oregon received something a little over $3 million. And we were expecting significantly more than that. So our next option is to apply for the municipal and nonprofit applications that are going to be due June 1st. And so we are excited to be a contributing partner to an application with Friends of Trees and their partners, Verde, Apano, Multnomah County, and other community partners on a collaborative proposal. We were instructed by the Vanguard City Urban Sustainability Development Network that these collaborative applications with multiple nonprofits and focusing on Justice 40 communities are going to be much stronger. This process is going to be much more competitive than the state level application process. And so we believe that servicing the Justice 40 communities and working as a partner to Friends of Trees application and the community organizations, we are requesting to integrate $5 million in PSEF funded street tree PSEF funding to do a street tree maintenance program as part of the partnership for this application. And we've also requested funding to build resilience to emerald ash borers trees in these communities. So there's two requests that we're going to use PSEF money to support the nonprofits that are doing this work in this application. And then the second part is the preparing for the emerald ash borer response. And as I said, the application is due June 1st and the awards are expected by September or October.
Ms. Brooks, anything that you need from the commission on this, input, support?
At this time, we are already drafting the narrative. We received a letter of commitment draft from the Office of Government Relations, and we'll be sending that by the 23rd next week. Right now, we don't have any additional support that we need. We just wanted to inform the commission of our second attempt to get this funding from the IRA.
Thank you, very helpful. We're going to move on then to community agreements, and Commissioner Jortner is going to go ahead and give an intro to this and to the document that was connected to the meeting.
Great, thanks. So I'd like to introduce this concept of community agreements and talk a little bit about what it is and what it's not and why now. So essentially, and I imagine many of you might have experience with this kind of concept. and some other work that you do as well, but the Forestry Commission's never had these this type of mechanism to my knowledge. So essentially, community agreements are mutually agreed upon guidelines and commitments that groups establish to create a safe, productive workspace to get their work done. Sometimes they're referred to as like, guidelines for engagement or ground rules, et cetera. But in some of the research that I've been doing online, community agreements are generally developed by and for the group involved, as opposed to taking something canned and available on other lists, which seems like a healthier way to go. But why now? Well, so we are in a very important and dynamic time for the Urban Forestry Commission. We'll be participating in and advising on a number of complex projects over the next couple of years, the Urban Forest Management Plan update, a Title 11 tree code update. We'll be continuing to be asked to advise on things like heritage trees and other important issues that are complicated and raise a lot of important issues and are sometimes difficult and challenging and potentially contentious. There's sort of a convergence of issues facing the city, including declining tree canopy, the climate crisis, the housing crisis, equity, gentrification, and displacement. And all of these touch on tree-related issues. And we are essentially a relatively new group of people on the commission. 4 of us are very new, and 3 of us, including myself, joined the commission about a year ago. So there's 7 out of 11 that have been on this commission for less than a year, and we don't have a lot of experience on this. We're working together. So it seems like a really opportune moment to look at how we work together and develop collaborative approaches that will help move us forward, make it an enjoyable experience. It's not intended to support the groupthink type of environment. In fact, it's actually intended to honor things like diverse perspectives that, when channeled appropriately in a safe and productive environment, respectful environment, can be used to evoke creativity, which groupthink doesn't typically do. So it's sort of celebrating our diverse perspectives. It's how we listen, it's how we communicate. And I circulated, I developed a draft just that included some of the types of topics that community agreements often contain. They aren't the long laundry list of 20 or so bullets that I put in there. They're more like a statements, 8 to 10 statements. In my experience on another board, we take turns reading those at the beginning of every meeting so that we reground in our commitment to those agreements and working together. And I'd like to get your feedback on whether you think this is something that would be beneficial and healthy for the commission to try to develop over the next months. And if so, if there would be a couple of people who would like to offer to work with me or others to develop kind of, well, to the extent we have some time, we could brainstorm some of the things that we would like to see in those commitments if we want to have them. And then maybe a smaller subgroup of folks that do not constitute a quorum can flesh those out into a set of statements that we can use and see how we would want to apply them. And if you guys have experience with those types of things in other aspects of your world, maybe you could share that with us as well. So just putting that out there for an idea.
Any reactions, commissioners, to the concept? And also just, this is really, I think, more of a brainstorming draft to provoke discussion more than, an actual draft. Commissioner Bechtold, I think you had your hand up first.
Hello, so I serve on another board in which we did this, and we start our meetings going through what kind of the community agreement and the ground rules. I find it really helpful, even for boards and commissions that have worked together for a long time and work together well. It's a really nice reminder of how to engage with each other in a meaningful way. So I would be supportive of us going through this exercise, because I do think, at least for me, I bring habits from my job that are not always conducive to good discussion. I mean, being a lawyer, I advocate pretty hard, and it's actually a really good reminder for me in how to frame my mindset when I come to these types of meetings.
Any other thoughts on just, Commissioner McMillan?
Yeah, just I think this is a great direction for the group, but that we might want to also have legal look at the language of it and just make sure that we're kind of covered and that we're from a legal standpoint, we make sure that we're free and clear. So maybe just a review by the lawyer of whatever we come up with.
Makes sense. Yeah. Any other thoughts, folks, on the idea? It is pretty standard, really, and certainly all the group process work that I've been involved in. Probably my main background in it is dealing with kind of physician group management or other clinicians, and I'll just share, I've been in a large group practice for 35 years, and the board of directors actually had to have an outside consulting group come in and, really work on this because I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but it's kind of like herding cats. And so it can get fairly dysfunctional and, fairly expensive if you don't have your ground rules, well-defined up front and utilize them. That's my own personal experience with it, plus other community groups, processes I'm involved in as well, like Ms. McMillan. Commissioner Vandermark and then Commissioner Meisner is next.
Well, thanks for bringing this forward. I am curious, like having done community agreements in a workplace setting a lot, like often part of a community agreement is being able to gracefully allow someone to maybe know when they're not following the agreements, right? Like if someone is, interesting power dynamics, it's being able to just acknowledge, right, when that's not happening. So I'm curious just to bring into the conversation, right? There's legal implications to Melinda's point around this. I love Darilee's point as well. But like how to do that in this particular setting, I'd just be curious like how we do that, right? Because like in a small, in a like staff meeting that I'm in, you can say like, hey, I just want to name the power dynamics in the room right now, right? If you're a boss, for instance, trying to do it, so I'm just curious what that could look like in a public meeting setting.
Yeah, really good point. Maybe Commissioner Meisner.
Oh, you can go ahead and comment on that.
Turner. Did you want to comment on that specifically?
Yeah, I think actually I've read some community agreements that touch on how to let folks know when they've said something harmful or hurtful or in a constructive way. I think in a public setting, it's okay to share if the process is going awry a bit, and if we need to kind of step back and remember our commitment to respectfulness or whatever needs to be said. And I think that I'd love to see our community agreements address Commissioner Vandermark's point actually, and include that so that we have some guidance on how to do that in a respectful way that is appropriate for a public context and is in line with our goals around how we work with each other. So I'm glad you raised that. That's just something for us to address in the discussion. Sorry, thank you,
Commissioner Meisner.
Yeah, first I want to thank you for putting this together. The one thing that like my comment is that, at least in my experience, sometimes I've seen these to be very performative, where it gets used as like a shield, especially like around like diversity and equity of this gets something like this gets stated at the front at the beginning of a meeting. Like, hey, like we we encourage diversity and equity, but then afterwards there's a lot of problematic language that gets used. But I appreciate putting this together. I just guess my comments make sure that this isn't just performative and we actually go through with what we end up going with for rules.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
The one thing I didn't mention is these would not address the content of our work. They're not going to tell us how to feel or how to deal with certain policies. It's just really about how we work together. So and I agree with you that sometimes words can be sort of a smoke screen. Say, now we've checked that box, you know, we've said the right things. Is that what you're sort of saying? Words on a page doesn't do the job, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah. So figuring out what those words might be is one thing, and then let's spend a little time how we apply them. I think that's, you know, reading them at the beginning of a meeting. I find it helpful, like Commissioner Bechtold as well. It grounds me and it reminds me I can take responsibility and be accountable. But maybe we could get real creative about how we apply them too. Thank you for that.
Excellent. Well, we've heard from several of you. I'd really like to hear from everybody. So anyone else want to volunteer? Or I could sort of call on people just to see if you have additional comments and thoughts about the utility of this, you know, and content, or how we're going to go about working on it.
Yeah, I'll go.
Casey?
Yeah, thank you. I think this would be a great idea. I think it would be a good place to start, as Commissioner Bechtold had noted. And also, as Commissioner Meiser said, I agree with this, that just putting something out there does not necessarily mean that that's what you're abiding by. But I do also think that, as you said, this is a great first step. If we don't have it at the beginning of each meeting, then we can't really abide by it because we're not even taking that first step. So I think taking the first step to actually have this, and then just making sure that somewhere in this agreement, we could include the expectations of what we want our community to have, but also some statement about self-accountability to make sure that each commissioner is able to look at themselves and say, yes, I've agreed to this. And if feedback comes to them, or they are trying to give feedback to somebody else, that they are also accepted still within these guidelines. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that would be important, just to make sure that there's a place for everybody to say, hey, I don't think you're meeting our agreements. I'm feeling this way because of your statement, something like that. I think that would be important to include in some broad sense.
Right. Good. Anyone else on Zoom who wants to volunteer some comments? Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Lilly.
Yes, thank you. I agree with having community agreements and have worked to develop a few for a couple organizations. So I'd be willing to help in the process of writing and drafting some. I think the my only comment would be that we essentially like use these as a common understanding for when we disagree, that when we disagree that we can be civil, and that it doesn't, like, if I disagree with you on the point you're making on policy, that's not personal, and that, like, you know, we may disagree on this one topic and then we go on the next topic and we can maybe agree on that topic. So it just, I think, creates a common understanding of civility and discussing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, I'll just go around for who I think we're missing. Commissioner Iannacho? And forgive me for pronunciation, is that correct? We can't hear you. You. Can't hear you yet. No.
She's not on.
Oh, no. You gonna write it in the chat? Okay, thank you.
She said in the chat that she doesn't have additional comments.
Oh, okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, Commissioner McMillan. You,
She did.
she's.
Yeah, that was my comment.
I think we got, okay. Commissioner Nelson's not here and Commissioner Plack's not here, correct? And, I think we probably heard from everyone then. So any volunteers?
Commissioner Lilly.
Commissioner Lilly,
Thank you.
Commissioner Jartner, anyone else who would like to volunteer? Okay, Commissioner Bechtel, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, great. Well, I propose that you as a subgroup go ahead and develop a draft, bring it back to the group, and we actually vote on it. So those will be our rules, accepted rules of engagement. And you guys are gonna direct us on how you think best to kind of call out if someone's not following the ground rules. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes,
Commissioner
can we-
Jordan.
Yeah, I have Commissioner Lilly's name and myself. Who was the other person who volunteered?
I'm gonna help you.
Commissioner
No,
Jordan.
That's Roberta, if you can't see.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're so little.
I'm willing to help. Shall I
No.
stand up? No. Thank you. That'll
Thank
be
you.
great. So I'll reach out to the two of you and try to coordinate a time. And I think it's not a
Okay.
quorum. We can work together on this, so. And I think I'd like to see time on the commission agenda for discussion, not just a vote. So I think
Yeah,
those
yeah,
pieces
excellent.
Can, you know,
Sounds good.
can add to it and so forth.
Very good. Okay.
And regarding timeline, you know, we can try for something for the next meeting, but certainly by the following one if we can't. Depends on people's schedules, but we'll do our best to get something to you sooner rather than later.
Very good. Thanks, everyone, for your input on that one. And actually, we're running behind time, so I'm sorry, we have like 15, 13 minutes or so. So let's go ahead and move on. So the next item is the UFC statement on Heritage Tree 26. And we're going to go ahead and hear from the city.
I think just so I'm
Commissioner.
we're ahead of time, are we not?
That's what I meant to say. Sorry, I said it wrong.
Okay.
We
Just
have
wanna make
about
sure, but-
13 extra minutes.
Sorry about that.
Okay,
On, how the city has worked on this to date, and then we'll take it from there.
thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, so first, the steps going forward on the heritage tree is that there is currently scheduled a public hearing and city council decision for Wednesday, June 7th. The time is yet to come, but it'll be on that day. Specifics of the agenda item and structure are determined by the council clerk, so we don't have those yet. That's normal process for council items. This commission transmission letter, the draft of which you all have been working on, would need to be submitted today because all of the council filing documents have to go in today. There are several of those. So this agenda item is the opportunity for you all to discuss if anything substantial is missing or problematic, and make those changes as needed in order to finalize the letter. In other words, there won't be an opportunity after this really to work further on the language of the letter due to the time frame to get things to city council. So this is an opportunity for feedback. Also, as a reminder, at the April commission meeting, you all discussed the letter content and asked that staff be the drafter, the collector of the comments and writer, and referred creation of the draft to the policy committee. The topic and the letter, of course, were discussed at the policy committee, and the broad topics identified there have been captured by Brian Lando at y'all's request.
So therefore, the goal today would be to give verbal input, and that would go back to Mr. Landau to put in those final changes and submit today.
That's right.
Is that the
That's
Okay.
right. So any language changes, it's actually gonna be me tracking that. Ashley's gonna
Okay.
step away. And I
Okay,
have the draft open, so I can finalize any language, but we'd have to get it done today. It's not something that can refer to the policy committee again, for example, due to the
Right.
timeframe for submission. And I would recommend that you might want to, after your discussion, just call for a vote on the letter and submit.
okay, great, thank you for the clarification on that. So I think probably we should just go around round robin and ask everyone, you know, what changes they might like to see. Does that sound reasonable? I will just maybe just start with the people in the room and then go to the Zoom folks. Is that okay? And just maybe go in order. Actually, I'll save one for last. Yeah, Commissioner, oh, go ahead. Sure. Did you want to do another intro aspect or?
You know, no, I'll just round robin here.
Okay,
You know, having written a number of these transmittal letters, I just want to,
can you speak up a little louder? It's just very hard to.
I guess I just want to say that having written a number of these letters and having participated in the what was ultimately several hours and months of discussion, I want to express my gratitude to all of you for all of the points that were raised during that discussion that are reflected really well in the minutes we reviewed today. We all spent a lot of time on this, and a lot of important issues were raised by the folks that ultimately voted to delist and the folks that ultimately voted not to delist. I was proud to be part of this group in that discussion. I felt that all of the issues raised by you and in this letter are important. And what's really important is that the city council understand the nature of that discussion, the points that were raised. Some people might think some are more important than others, but I feel that all of these points were important, and it was a difficult vote for me. It might have been a difficult vote for others. So what needs to happen with this is the city council needs to understand why it was a 6-4 vote. Usually we don't see that kind of split vote that often, these types of groups, other commissions as well. And the 6-4 vote indicates that there was some really tough stuff. There were some really important things that people felt very differently about. And that also all of them are important. I agree with all of them as being important. And I want the city council to understand what we grappled with as a group and as individuals and as the public. And I want them not to be surprised when and if those same issues get raised again to them. I want them to understand why there was a 6-4 vote, the investment that each and every one of you put into this. And for me, and we talked about this at the policy committee meeting too, it's really important that all the issues are represented. I understand that there was a majority vote, even if it had been 10-2, and I was on the winning, I was on the prevailing side, I would want all of those issues that each and every one of us raised to be out there in plain view, not hidden, and so that folks will know the reason that what we went through to make the decision we made. I'm not sorry that it's going to council. I think these are all important issues. I'm glad it's going to get some additional face time with our decision makers and with the community. So I support, I wouldn't have said everything exactly this way myself, but generally, I think it captures the gist of what happened. And I think that's what these letters are for. And I feel it honored every perspective and noted that where the vote came down. So that's my.
No, thank you for that intro. And actually, I want to reiterate again that to thank the Burton family for coming forward and bringing community and raising a lot of important policy topics. I think it's important that we think about how we could make this program better. And so thank you, even though, it's difficult conversations, really important conversations to have. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. So we're going this order. Since Roberta, did you have anything else to say, Roberta, since you started?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Meiser.
Yeah, there's just a couple things I would like to add to the letter, small things. On the second page, where underneath where the commission, it says the commission received a statement from the Heritage Tree Committee in support of maintaining the tree designation. I would like to add a sentence stating that the North Portland Housing Committee, which is an official government body for the city of Portland, gave us a recommendation to delist the tree. Underneath, like where we have the urban forestry staff assessment, I would like to add that I'd just like to add a sentence stating that Rob from the attorney's office stated that in his professional opinion that this would not set precedent for the heritage tree program. So I just have like a sentence around that. As far as reasons for delisting, I don't think we have time for it, but I would like something stating that from the community that we have heard from did play a part in the reason for delisting. In the original vote in March, I specifically stated that I was voting to delist because of what we heard from the community. And then, for example, in the systematic racism part, I think there's mention of hearing from leaders, which is very vague, and I'd like to be very specific that we heard from the NAACP, the Coalition of African American Pastors. We also heard from the neighbors of the tree. And then lastly, in the conclusion, there's talk that that was a difficult determination for all the commissioners. I don't think that's a little broad. It wasn't like, I don't think it was that hard of a decision on my part. Granted, like there were a lot of factors, but it wasn't that hard of a decision. And I don't like the framing that it was a hard decision for all of us. Those are all things I have.
Do you have those written, Commissioner Meister?
No, I can write them for you though.
That would be really helpful because I wasn't able to track those. And of course, the commission needs to decide, but I need to document them today.
So, yeah, let's do a clarification then, a process. So if folks can get you changes today in writing, is that what you would prefer?
That would be preferable. Of course, they need to be changes that the commission has approved.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna
Right.
note, I think it all needs to be done before we adjourn today.
Well, what we can say is with the recommended changes, right? So we could approve with the recommended changes, but we won't have them in front of us in
Yeah.
writing synthesized, unfortunately.
Okay.
So there would be a trust level there.
Okay, if that's what we have to deal with, that's what we have to deal with. I don't like that very much.
Yeah,
Not after we leave.
Yeah, I would like to know 100% what the letter's saying
Yeah.
before we leave. That way
so that's gonna be tricky. It's gonna be tricky. Any ideas on that?
yeah. Well, maybe we can continue to see what other changes there will be or what anyone else proposes.
Sure. Why don't we do that? I think
Okay.
that's a good idea. Why don't we go around the room? We realize this, we've got a kind of a process crunch here.
Yeah, we got an extra 15 minutes to talk about this, correct? Looks like
We
you got
have
me
quite a
there.
bit of time.
Yeah, I got
Basically, this
before.
is the last agenda item. So,
We have
Okay.
45 more minutes.
Yes, yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
okay, Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, I appreciate the letter and Brian's putting it in there. I think I agree with Roberta in that this is a very unique situation. This is the only time in my understanding that heritage trees of any sort have been delisted for any reason other than the tree being dead, dying, or dangerous. Or if it was already cut down extrajudicially. So I think that having all of the individual statements in here on the first page listed out as the primary reasons for one direction or the other, and then followed up with the kind of laying out of the facts, and then finally, each one of those bullet points gets a sufficient amount of information. I think that's very clear, and I want to try to make sure that this stays as generally neutral as possible, because there was a flip on, there was not a consensus that everyone decided one way or the other. So I think it's important the way that this is written. And I also would hesitate to try to fill it up with too many details, one direction or another. And that's not to try to hide anything. I think we should put as many details in as is necessary. But often that can be cluttered by, saying all these individual people specifically voted one way. I think the only reason that, or what Commissioner Meisner brought up about the one person or one group that's sent a letter that is marked specifically as saying Heritage Tree Committee said this, I think that it's important that they're noted because they're the ones who vote initially to make these heritage trees in the first place. And second, they are, to my understanding, the only group that voted, the outside public entity or private entity, anyone who came and gave public comments saying that this should not be delisted, which is why they being the singular one, their name was on there. So I'm not sure that we need to put every other community member on every side. I do think that saying just community members with the amount of information here is plenty. I think that's all I have. I appreciate how much is here. And I think everything else should stay.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna go around just by order of who's on the screen. And then you'll let me know if I missed anyone. So Commissioner McMillan.
I was surprised at the tone of the letter. While I agree that both sides should be represented because of the close voting, that it was a little apologetic for the actual prevailing decision. And while I don't have, specifics with tone, I think we need to strongly give the message that we as a commission voted a certain way. And I thought it was a little wishy-washy. I know that's not concrete, but I agree with the previous comments. I believe Commissioner Meisner, that we need to list the community members, because they're not just community members, they are community leaders. And those that have shown up to give testimony strengthens the reason why the vote went a certain way. And I think those should be included. So that's my note.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Vandermark.
A couple quick thoughts. One, because of the timeline, I am very supportive of us voting to approve letter with some mild adjustments, but I do not want to hold up this process. So I just want to make that clear at the forefront. I will agree somewhat with Melinda. In rereading it, I had to take a moment as someone involved in the process to be like, is it really clear what we're recommending here? Like, just even in this, maybe the second paragraph, like it says the recommendation, but if there's just some slight language that can even just say, like, just make it clear. Like I was just rereading that and I really had to like make certain I understood that. And I just want to be clear at the end of the day, if city council is reading this, they should know what the final decision is. And I'm aware of the desire to have a lot of balance within this process because of where we are. I'm probably not going to nitpick about it, but because I want it to be able to move forward. So, the process can move forward with this, but yeah, I think I'll even just leave it there, aside from the fact that like we have had votes in the past where there are dissenting opinions and we have not given this level of space to dissenting opinions in the past. So I just would probably want to highlight that fact that there's been times I have not agreed with decisions or others have not, and we haven't given it the same amount of space that we are here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bechtel.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments that have already been made about the tone of the letter. I was not present at the meetings in which the decision was made. So when I read the letter, I was a little surprised by it's very new. I mean, it's very neutral and it actually is somewhat difficult to discern what the decision was. And I would expect for such a, and again, what Commissioner Vandermark said about timing, I also am sensitive to timing. So this is more for us to think about in the future. This does appear to be a huge departure from what we typically do. And I think when going to city council and educating them about why we made this decision, we really have to lean into the factors that swayed the majority of the commission to make this very serious decision to delist an otherwise healthy tree. And the community impact, the impact to the homeowners, the systemic, all of those policy issues are very big issues for our community. And I think they're somewhat minimized by the language here. And so this letter looks more casual than the actual discussion that took place. So more of observation, because I also too know that there's a timing sensitivity here.
Thank you, Commissioner Bechtold. Commissioner Lilly.
Thank you. I want to echo the my other commissioners are mentioning about the tone of the letter. I from my understanding, this letter needs to be like, City Council, here's our decision as a commission, whether the vote was close or not close at all. This is our decision and our recommendation as a commission, and some reasons why. And if that would be priority over giving insight and historical and context into the decision and why it was such a close vote. I think some of those added context and details can be, if City Council wanted to look into public records of our meetings, our meeting notes, minutes, as well as a list of all of the support, like all the letters that have been included as well. Like those are all like public documents. I don't feel like they may need to live in a letter. I think our letters need to be like, City Council, this is as community members who have been, selected in this process. This is what we're recommending. I mainly would like to those are just comments, maybe even just for future reference. If I'm all about getting the letter, whatever's easiest and quickest done. So whatever we can vote to do that. Yeah, I'll support. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Iannacho.
Can't hear
Yeah,
you.
we still can't hear you, unfortunately. Not sure what's with the voice.
She's working.
Yeah, perhaps she can call in if she needs. We should be able to hear from that.
Yeah, if you want to just call in, we'd be happy to do that. Maybe that would help. It sounds like she's going to do that. Yeah, she's going to call in. So let's see, I think other than Commissioner Iannacho, where we've heard from others. So while she's dialing in, any final thoughts from other commissioners? Oh, actually, I didn't say. Let me quickly. Generally, I thought, the letter was okay. There were just a couple of items. Let's see, under the primary reasons for support of delisting, I thought it was reasonable. The primary reason expressed in opposition for delisting. And I believe it looked like the intent was this to be really kind of a summary to council of what we then go into in detail. So I think the largest primary reason is eliminated for the opposition, which is that this is a healthy tree that has a treatable infestation. So I wanted that as number one under the primary reasons in opposition for delisting. And the only other part that sort of struck me the wrong way as we go into the details was repeated over and over when we started to talk about these little sub items. The majority believe this, the majority believe that. And I don't think we actually voted on all of these sub items. So I don't think we should be saying the majority when in fact we didn't take a vote on something. So, and that's sort of repeated in multiple multiple spots.
Can you be
And-
specific? where?
Yes, let me see if I can find it. I'm sorry I didn't mark it up. Let me see. No, I don't want to take up time, so how's about if I look at this carefully and then I'll just get to you.
Can I ask one
on that.
clarifying question for Commissioner, for our City Forester, Harrow? Can you, at the council meeting, is staff going to be giving a presentation?
We have not determined that yet.
Okay.
Usually there is.
Yeah, I would think so. Staff will kind of present. So I had a couple of thoughts, just to put out there while Commissioner's calling.
Yes.
On Megan's, on Commissioner Vandermark's point, under the recommendation where it says UFC recommendation, remove the Heritage Day designation. I would suggest putting that in bold. And if we want under the, I think it's quite possible that city council and their staff might not get past the first page. So I like that the gist of it is here. Under primary reasons expressed in, you could say majority support. Already listing the tree to reinforce what the recommendation was, primarily reasons expressed in minority opposition. Those are some ways with the font bolding and so forth, that if it's, so that if they don't get past this page, they know what the recommendation is. And they know the issues that we discussed. And if they want to read the rest, they will, and if they won't, they won't. So formatting issues and maybe adding those terms. I also appreciate Commissioner Meisner's suggestions. I think they're good ones. I think that that where it says the neighbor, we heard from the neighbors. I think we heard from one or two. We didn't hear from a lot of neighbors, but I think it's important to say we did hear from a neighbor, as well as the. I like the idea of listing the leadership affiliations that we heard from as well. So appreciate that.
Good, thank you, Commissioner. So let's see, there we go, we have a hand raised. Do we have a voice?
Hopefully.
Oh, yay.
Yay! I'm sorry. My laptop has a mind of its own. Sometimes it likes my meetings and sometimes it does not. So just in case this didn't work, I also put in my recommendations in the chat if you just want to copy and paste that, and then you can kind of parse it out that way. And I'll go through it very briefly. So in page 1, I also recommend to bold paragraph 2 to highlight what we are recommending. Also on page 1, I recommend to move the bullet 3, starting in insufficient information. I feel that should be listed first. As an organization, I think it's important for organizations to lead with accountability if they played a factor in causing harm in some way. And the way it reads now, it emphasizes financial hardship, which puts it on the person who is experiencing that financial hardship, rather than leading with the accountability of insufficient information because of our previous practices. So I would recommend that to be moved first. Also on page 1, I would recommend to move paragraphs 3 and 4. So that's the initial UFC vote and the second UFC vote to page 2, right above the section heading that is in bold, the Heritage Tree number 2060 listing request. Again, just to kind of clarify what our recommendation is and not really confuse it a bit by having those 2 votes there. And then my last recommendation on page 1, I would do a page break at paragraph 5 and then add a new header called something to the effect of additional context that led to the UFC's recommendation. So overall, I do find it valuable to have a documentation of the diverse conversation that we had, but it is extra information. It is context that maybe the city council will want to know. If I'm putting myself in their shoes, I would want to know, and since they don't have us all present, that would give them that extra information. But we want to make clear what our recommendation is, and then for those folks who want to dig deeper and figure out what we were grappling with, we can provide that information on the second page, and so on. So those are my recommended changes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? We've got more time, so.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Commissioner Iannaccio, are you saying that page break and the new title would be after the bullet lack of public notice to the community or someplace else?
The page break would be, so, and I wish I could share my screen, but on page 1 where it says primary reasons, and then primary reasons expressed in support of delisting, I would push all of that down to the next page, and that would create the additional context, or the start of the additional context.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Oh, and then the pronunciation of my last name is Iannaccio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Iannaccio, thank you.
Iannaccio, the H.
Emphasis, Iannaccio.
Yeah, so when you're breaking it up, as long as you put the in the first half and you end with acho, it's going to be much closer.
Thank you.
So this is page 1.
Yeah, which is tracking. So for clarification, it appears that one commissioner is a little confused what you said about the page break. So after the bolded decision, then we would move on to a second page, or?
After the, so if you just look at how it currently reads now, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, starting with primary reasons expressed in support, pushing all of that content down essentially to the next page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've captured that. I'm trying to collect all these to have them in for whatever your final decision is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, any other comments? Because I'm wondering if the most effective use of our time might be taking a 10-minute break, allowing Director Cairo to try to synthesize those. And then we're all looking at it. Does that sound good? And then be easier to vote? I think it would. Does that sound reasonable? Is that, or?
And then you can walk us through it.
Then you could, yeah.
I can try to do that. I could probably email it to all of you.
Okay, yeah,
also.
email it to us.
The big thing two things are gonna be missing. You can send me, or I have some of them.
Okay.
Commissioner Meissner, but not all of them. As soon as you can send that to me, that would be helpful. And some of the comments were more general around tone, and I have not been able to capture those, nor would I in this.
Yes, so what we would have to do is vote on, some of the changes that we can implement now, but then have Director Cairo go away, try to capture perhaps some of the tone things. And we're gonna have to vote and sort of just entrust it to her at that point.
My hope is that with the changes we've talked about, the bold, to make clear what the decision is, changing the formatting, Commissioner Iannacio's suggestion to break it apart a bit. I'm hoping that helps with clarification and tone as well in a sense.
And that would be
Yeah,
my preference. I would prefer not to have it left to my ability to meet your expectations about changes to tone.
Yeah.
That would be something where a draft would go back and forth.
Right. That's fair. Yeah. Okay.
As the person who brought up tone, I'm very happy with the clarification. The reorganization, the bolding, I think that solves a lot of the issues. And time-wise, I think if we make these changes, that will suffice.
Okay, Commissioner Iannaccio, is that a new hand or?
Yeah, I was just going to echo that I agree with Melinda and Roberta as far as making the formatting changes would help with the tone because it would clarify our position as a commission.
Excellent. All right, so we're gonna take a 10-minute break and we're gonna reassemble. Everyone's gonna take a moment to kind of at least browse through an emailed change draft, and we'll probably have to take a vote at that point. So sound good? All right, so back at 11:15.
11:06. I could disconnect from Wi-Fi.
Sorry. All right, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. You can go ahead.
I was just gonna show her the
Yeah,
place
yeah.
where it's at majority held.
Yep.
And, you know, unless we take a vote on every sub item. Yeah, just right there, then. Yeah, come on over. All right.
You might already have got these.
Excellent. No, but thank you.
Or page one, it doesn't really matter. Should be simple.
So it's got that of all the supporters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, mine needs to be correct.
What was that?
Yeah, mine, when you're giving the Marcus's letter,
Yeah.
mine's not right.
Okay, so I've
I
got.
didn't get a chance to. I'm not the principal developer. I'm just Rubicon Development Services. That's what just the company.
Where you were seeing this.
All right.
Either. Either before or after their forestry stuff assessment.
So let's see. You mentioned someplace else, the Preston thing.
It's mentioned in the, but yesterday, it's not good. I put it
And I look at that, yeah.
it's detailed, not it's validates how people.
But it's just turned along.
Right, I figured,
Just talking about the orange.
yeah, I just figured it'd be better to put it next to like where the header is.
Moment.
We have to make it more.
Yeah, I really have, I think too. These are all. So you don't feel like that's some problems.
You went to this stomach, right?
It should have
So-
been there. I got to call it
That's
out.
perfect.
It said it.
Perfect,
They
thank you.
shipped it all up.
8%.
Yeah.
Okay.
First
Ashley
class, so
ran into
I've
some
been waiting
medical
for it.
issues. Yeah, she was telling me she was a funeral, just went to her.
Okay.
If it's a small.
They helped. We just gave the EMTs her bag and ID, which was what they wanted. Okay, thank you. Yeah, yeah, she looked okay. Thanks, doctor. Okay.
So.
Saying before staff. Or in staff. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me, because he's dead. Is there any mention in there of presidency? No.
In the staff. No.
It's just, you don't see it.
Right.
And just on a big graph, I happened to see, like, she had commented on the photo. And I reached out to her a couple of years ago and I said, I think we may be related. Are you from this attorney? And it was.
So you saw it yesterday.
Yeah, so
Cool.
just out of
just out the blues, her daughter's boyfriend, I'd say, is an engineer. They lived in Austin. He got a job, got transferred to Portland.
Oh, and then for the.
And her daughter, 5 years ago, came out to visiting. And she reached out to me, she said, my daughter's thinking about coming out there. You know, so I met her and it's like, who would have thought it? So her daughter moved here. So she came to visit her daughter and I was better friends with her sister, her older sister than her. And she was younger and we hadn't seen each other maybe 40 years or so. It was, and it was like, the family for a long time was real close because 3 brothers in one family married 3 sisters. So we would always say, they always said they were double cousins. And so, and so when you see a lot of us, you can tell that we're related, although, yeah. So she was just like, wow. So it was just interesting to see. So that's not. And then
It is.
our one cousin has done.
They changed the name.
And she's traced.
Yeah, it wasn't that long, 4 months ago.
Back to Angola from 1622. Actually, I think that.
That's the part I haven't done yet.
Yes.
I know I have brothers from Barbados for that. But on my grandfather's side.
Okay.
But
All right.
So there's, yeah, this is the organizations. I'll double check.
You're thinking what?
I'll double check the name of the house, because I think it might say committee on the Portland site.
Could you send me the web link?
Yeah, thank you. It's the Northeast Oversight Committee, which oversees the implementation of the neighborhood housing strategy.
The housing.
And
Yeah, I was gonna say something. Nancy Dexter. I saw her name was 266. So she's a physician and she's a critical care physician, and she and I were both like same English class, and I know her well. And so I was gonna say. Because yeah, I don't think she has. Yeah. Housing Bureau. Okay. Exactly. Because she's a very thoughtful person, so yeah, I don't think. Unless, I'm just working on that.
There are amendments.
Yeah.
There are proposed amendments out there, but you can't read them if they're consent.
Yeah.
Oversee,
Yeah.
she's a committee.
Yeah, and I work on that. She kind of needs some housing strategy too. But whatever, I mean, you know, yeah, it'd be interesting to, yeah. That might be the most effective to folks to figure out, yeah, strategy singular. That makes more sense. Okay.
This is just a lot.
Thank you. This is how they wrote it in the letter.
Oh, thanks. So this isn't from the whole, this is from Stephen Holt, the chair,
Yes.
but not from the whole committee.
this says.
This is from him.
Yeah,
He's on
I
the
understand that. That's a
Okay.
little different
Yeah.
than the whole Heritage Tree.
Okay, then,
It's an opinion to be listed, but it's not the same.
okay. Let's just change it to the chair then.
Okay, I'll add it to the list of comments, right?
Okay.
Where do you think those should go?
What?
That texture.
Paragraph.
Is, I forget the name of the district, but it's
Several members of the
all of Northwest Portland goes way out.
Thank you for this,
Yeah.
Victoria. It's very helpful.
Keep getting them back.
Unless someone else wants to.
That'd be nice
I'm
to
not-
meet her.
yeah, that's great.
Okay, I'm gonna list them at the bottom for now. Okay. Because I can move them later. I think they'll be easier to see. Thank you.
Still working on the final aspects. What's it? Oh, yeah, this is fun. Totally.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask you a question? I've been, so looking back at the minutes, and I was remembering you were saying, just for my edification, you're saying you aren't interested in developing the property? Because,
What I'm
because,
trying to point
because,
out is that, well, Victoria can speak for herself, but that being said,
I'm not
there
sure.
was never any desire to remove the house that's there. The house that's there, the desire was to continue to
Yeah.
rent the house. So I guess I just didn't want a misperception. One, I'm not a developer.
Well, we got at least one letter from somebody that said that constrains the development on the property. And then the minutes here talk about CT Wells providing testimony, noting that the scale of the tree limits the potential development on the property. So I was confused.
Yeah, I mean, that's, and one of, in my humble opinion, sometimes it's one of the challenges with when you have different people testify. I mean, they say what is on their mind, but it's not exact, but.
Because we already knew the scale of what we could do without disturbing the tree. And that was food carts, and that's what Tony signed up for. In 2021, we already put in enough electricity to support food carts.
Right. So I guess.
So the development aspect,
So,
there was
yeah.
never really
But you do want to take out the tree, right? Because you said you can't keep it. Or
I think we've already talked about a lot of that, and I'm not comfortable.
Okay,
with
okay, I was
your
just.
questioning.
I'm
I'm not sure
sorry, I'm
where you're
sorry.
leading with
I
it.
was just confused, because if somebody asked me if they, do they want to develop the property, I would be sort of like, I'm not exactly sure, because I've heard sort of different things, but I appreciate your point that people say.
No, what Victoria said, it really, the house is gonna remain, and develop food courts is really the primary goal, but the
I
problem.
appreciate
Hi, all. Now that we're back, I wonder if we can just vote on finalizing the letter and moving that forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not quite done, but because I'm listing the commenters. I will send you all right now. What do I have so far?
we're doing so far.
Everything else should be in there. Got the
That's fair. So you're just gonna email it?
Yep. It's track changes version. So that should be helpful. All right, here we go.
Did you say emailing it to us?
Yes, I am having to save it out with things. But
There you go.
Should be heading your way. I just sent it.
Got it.
Okay, so I ask everyone to maybe just take 3 minutes to browse through it. And then we'll ask for a motion to vote on the letter with changes. I do want to say it's not going to be perfect. You can't really do a good letter by committee. And we're going to trust, Jen to make it readable and to hopefully include, the majority of folks' concerns about the letter. But that the important thing is getting it to the next city council meeting. Okay, so take a couple minutes to just take a quick peek at it. Just found a typo. Yeah. So under the primary reasons expressed in opposition, I wanted, healthy tree with treatable beetle infestation. That's kind of the first item. It's, we go into detail about that later, but tree, anything else that folks are catching that we missed? Manageable beetle infestation beetle infestation for which there are treatments.
But it's gonna be 3 years. Isn't that misleading?
Well, we have that all in there too.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know, if it said.
I didn't see it. I didn't see anything that said that it's manageable.
It refers to multiple years, yeah, in the detail. Commissioner. Yes. Ianacho. We still can't hear you, unfortunately. She's off the phone too. Yeah, you might want to call back in again. Oh, great.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure if we were ready to comment, I guess,
Sure.
on the changes.
And I would say, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say 3 minutes for comments because then we've got to vote. Does that seem fair? So let's everyone just make it real short and your really important changes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, just looking through the track changes, it looks like the spirit of the recommendations were captured. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Yay. Anyone else seeing things?
Please know also that the list of comments received in favor of delisting, clearly that's not complete. I'm still working on that.
Yeah, there may not be everything in here because you're going to go through and make sure you captured it all.
I would like Chair Feldstein to be able to leave the meeting with everything done except maybe the list of participants, because that's just
Okay.
documentation.
Okay.
That's not
Okay, that sounds good.
qualitative. Right?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Can we add the list of commentaries as a reason for voting to delist?
Sorry, I'm having trouble here.
Sorry.
Just speak up a little bit.
Regarding the list of commenters, can we just add that as a reason for our vote to delist?
that what would be a reason for delisting?
But the reason would be who we heard the comments from. So just like a general, we voted to delist due to who we heard comments from. And then like the
Community
list.
support and leadership comments in favor of delisting.
As a bullet point, and then the list can be further down the letter.
Already supported delisting. Any preference of where that bullet appears? There are 4 there. This would be a 5th one.
I don't have a preference. Does anyone else have a preference?
And support for delisting expressed by community members.
Yeah, community members and leaders.
Anything else? Okay, so we've got
Just
them.
one quick
Okay.
thing, given the change to add the city attorney's suggestion about not establishing precedent, where the further down it talks about concern about potentially establishing precedent. Maybe add, despite the city attorney's statement at the beginning of the sentence where it says some commissioners were concerned about that would change public expectations and lower the bar for delisting heritage tree.
Can you help me find that?
Yeah, it's I moved around a little bit, but let's see. It is on the last page where it says insufficient exploration of alternative options and potential unintended impacts on the Heritage Tree program, that bullet.
Okay, yep.
So just start that saying, second paragraph under that section, there was also concern. Just start that with, despite the city attorney's suggestion, there was also concern that delisting Heritage Tree 26 would affect public expectation. Just the rest of the sentence, essentially the rest of the sentence stays the same. Because,
Despite the
we
city
heard them
attorney's
too, but a programmatic precedent is different than a legal precedent. That's what the point is there. Just-
Okay, so that would now read, there was also concern despite the city attorney's opinion, parenthetical, or commas, that delisting heritage tree number 26 would affect public expectations, resulting in a future weakening of the criteria to remove future heritage trees.
Commissioner Vandermark.
Because of time, I'm gonna motion unless anybody else has comments, which I might even encourage them not to unless it's a burning need, that we move forward with a vote to approve the lever. So my motion would be pending these comments that we just made and what Jen has updated, that we move to approve this letter.
Any second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Any no votes? Okay, yes, one no, okay. And any abstentions? Okay. We're good then. Thank you all. Thank you all for all your efforts on this and thoughtfulness, and we will see you next month. Take care.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.